Hey there, this is Coach Bill with Meditate School of Mindfulness, and I'm bringing you this workshop, this master class, if you will, on the practice of being love, how we connect mindfulness and compassion and loving kindness into a practice that allows us to go beyond the needing or wanting or searching for love or giving love to being love. So as we begin this practice, I just want you to close your eyes for a moment. Breathe in nice and simple and easy. Feel the movement of your breath flowing in and out. And I wonder if you could turn your attention straight to where your heart is beating in that heart space. And breathe into that space for a moment. Let yourself be right there. And I want you to reflect for a moment on this phrase. The most important aspect of love isn't the giving or the receiving. It's the being. Now, if you will, just open your eyes and let's move forward. In the practice of mindfulness, we focus on the fact that we want to rise above the doing and practice being. So again, the most important aspect of love is not the giving or the receiving. It's the being. And when we focus on being love, we open ourselves up to see that we don't need to strive to be it. We are it. In mindfulness, we strive to release the needing and the wanting and the yearning and practice the being. That's what it's all about. Allowing ourselves to be from that place of being. We start to get into a sense of letting go of the needing or the feeling that something's missing. Being love's a whole different thing. So listen to this video for a moment.
Oh, I am grateful to have been loved and to be loved now and to be able to love, because that liberates. Love liberates. It doesn't just hold. That's ego. Love liberates. When my son was born, I was 17. My mother had a huge house, 14-room house. At 17, I went to her and said, I'm leaving. She asked me, you're leaving my house? And she had live-in health. I said, yes. I found a job, and I've got a room with cooking privileges down the hall, and the landlady will be the babysitter. She asked me, you're leaving my house? I said, yes, ma'am. And you're taking the baby? I said, yes. She said, all right, remember this. When you step over my door sill, you've been raised. You know the difference between right and wrong. Do right. Don't let anybody raise you and make you change. And remember this, you can always come home. I went home every time life slammed me down and made me call it uncle. I went home with my baby. My mother never once acted as I told you so. She said, oh, baby's home. Oh, my darling, Mama's going to cook you something. Mother's going to make this for you. Love. She liberated me to life. She continued to do that. My son may have been 5 years old. My mother would pick him up all the time and feed him. And I went to her once a month, and she would cook for me. One day I went to her house, and she'd cooked red rice, which I loved. After we finished eating, we walked down the hill, and she started across the street. She said, wait a minute, baby. I was 22 years old. She said, wait a minute, baby. You know, I think you're the greatest woman I've ever met. She said, Mary McLeod Bethune, Eleanor Roosevelt, and my mother, you're in that category. Then she said, give me a kiss. I gave her a kiss, and I got onto the streetcar. I can remember the way the sun fell on the slats of the wooden seats. I sat there and I thought about her. I thought, suppose she's right. She's intelligent. And she says she's too mean to lie. So suppose I am going to be somebody. She released me. She freed me to say I may have something in me that would be of value. Maybe not just to me. You see? That's love. And when she was in her final sickness, I went out to San Francisco. And the doctor said she had three weeks to live. I asked her, would you come to North Carolina? She said yes. She had emphysema and lung cancer. I brought her to my home. She lived for a year and a half. And when she was finally, in extremis, she was on oxygen and fighting cancer for her life. And I remembered her liberating me. And I said, I hope I'll be able to liberate her. She deserved that from me. She deserved a great daughter, and she got one. So in her last days, I said, now, I understand that some people need permission to go. As I understand it, you may have done what God put you here to do. You were a great worker. You must have been a great lover, because a lot of men, and if I'm not wrong, maybe a couple of women, risk their lives to love you. You were a piss-poor mother of small children, but you were a great, great mother of young adults. And if you need permission to go, I liberate you. I went back to my house, and something said, go back. I was in my pajamas. I jumped in my car and ran, and the nurse said, she's just gone. You see, love liberates. It doesn't bind. Love says, I love you. I love you if you're in China. I love you if you're across town. I love you if you're in Harlem. I love you. I would like to be near you. I'd like to have your arms around me. I'd like to hear your voice in my ear. But that's not possible now. So I love you. Go.
So if you tap into that teaching, that expression of what love is, we don't see ourselves as passive recipients of it, or we don't see ourselves as gift givers of it. We should see ourselves as embodying it. As we move through this session, I'm going to help you discover that it doesn't take a lot of work to discover the truth is we are beings of love, and I believe that's the foundation of everything we do. So, as we begin, I just want you to think about it this way. Think about something for a moment. There's a true mindful practice that we call a Dharma rain. As you're studying something, you read it or listen, the goal is to let the information to penetrate your soul of consciousness, the soil of consciousness that you hold deep within. So try not to overthink the information, especially at first. Don't think too much. Don't judge or compare or try to fit it into your perfect little box of understanding. In our practice, we teach that it's like trying to catch raindrops in a bucket. The goal is to just allow your consciousness to receive the rain so that the seeds buried deep in your consciousness have a chance to be watered gently. And we realize that in our stored consciousness are buried all these seeds of knowing. These seeds represent everything we've ever done, everything we've ever experienced or perceived. And when a seed is watered, it manifests into the being, into our mind and our body. This is the work of mindfulness, to cultivate the garden, to nurture those seeds. We have to trust that the soil of our consciousness is fertile and that all the seeds of love and understanding, of forgiveness, of joy, and happiness are already there, along with all the other seeds of our intentions. So as we go through this lesson, try not to think too hard. Just be open to the ideas and let your seeds thrive in their own way, because there will be things that at first you may not agree with or that don't resonate with you, and that's okay. So, as we move forward, think about this. The Buddhist teaching on love says that just as blood nourishes the heart, which keeps it flowing, so love nourishes the spiritual freedom and is, in turn, kept flowing by it. So as we allow our love to flow freely, it nourishes and nurtures our soul. That's what this is all about. The connection is so strong in Buddhism that it's known as the path to freedom. And it could equally be called a practice of love. It's a practice of love. Perhaps that's why the Dalai Lama says his religion is kindness. For the Buddha, love is one of the paths to spiritual liberation. For me, love is what this is all about. It's everything I do. In every teaching that I do, in every word that I say, I focus on letting it come from that place of love. And it's a beautiful way to move through your life. It's so much better than how I used to move through my life. So love may flow from us equally towards all being, or it can grow freely without needing to be directed to everyone. When boundless love without any particular object is recognized in Buddhism as a form of liberation, you just let the love flow. And in the practice and the power of how we focus on what we put out comes back to us, the more love we put out, the more we receive. And that's how we heal. And that's how we move forward. So to be free only when things are pleasant isn't real liberation. Liberation comes all the time. So similarly to love only in the optimal conditions, that's not real love. If somebody has to meet all of these goals, check all of these boxes and to fit into this little box, then is it really love? That's more forced. That's not true, deep, authentic love. So, one of the most rewarding spiritual practices is to cultivate the ability to bring love into all aspects of our life and to share it with all the people we encounter. Everyone, without condition, without expecting anything in return. And of course, as we go forward, we'll talk about the different aspects of love because when we talk about sharing love with all people, it's not the same passionate or friendly love that we share with our spouse or with our family or our friends or even our neighbors. It's a love that can be shared just by seeing people, just by recognizing people and holding them in that energy. So it entails learning how to include love's presence while we speak to others, while we're in conflict with others, and while we're living with others. It's coming from that place of love. And sometimes love can be harsh, but it's different than going through your life in a space of hate or anger. So it's a daunting task, but it all begins, like everything we do, with having the intention to do so. And some days will be better than others, and some encounters will be better than others. And at times we might be challenged in this practice, but that's why it's a practice. So when we talk about how we focus on where we go with love, there are four qualities in the way it's taught from the perspective of mindfulness. So as we focus on those four qualities, we're going to learn today a little bit about what the practice of loving kindness is, of meditation. We're going to explore a bit of how we can awaken a deeper level of compassion. We're going to talk about joy, and not a celebratory setting off fireworks and balloons type of joy, but a calm, peaceful, loving joy that exists deep within our heart. And then we're going to really talk a little bit about the practice of equanimity. But as we go forward, think about this. As I said a minute ago, sometimes we learn that if we're chasing lessons and we're trying to fill buckets of water, when we focus on practicing love, we can see that the more we practice, the more we become filled. So being love and walking in love and living in love takes practice. But every time we practice, we add another drop to the jug. We add more love to that bucket. So the practice is supported by appreciating each and every manifestation of love that we encounter. And there are so many different ways we can see love. From the people who taught us lessons, who teach us lessons, who guide us, who offer us inspiration. From the way somebody cooks for us or prepares something for us. From the way somebody lovingly creates new things or develops or invents things. From the way somebody creates art by singing or painting or writing, from the people we live with and the people we share our lives with, to the kindness of a stranger, to the way a flower opens and the sun rises and this rain falls from the sky. With everything we see, if we see it from that perspective that it is nurturing and loving, then we start to fill that bucket. So even practicing loving kindness for a time that it takes a snap of a finger can be beneficial. And with every drop that's practiced is significant. With each and every drop of water, the water jug gets filled. That's what the practice is all about. So as we move forward in this practice, we again have to focus on the fact that there are different aspects of love. That the Greeks used 6 different words when it came to speaking about love. Agape was a love that it's kind of a selfless love that is sometimes unconditional. It's the love that we'd have for, if you're religious, for God, the love you have for all of humanity. It's a word that we use for the unconditional love we find when we wish goodwill to others. They use a word called pragma, which is used to describe a mature love. And we've all seen that love that occurs between people who have been together for so many years. After a couple's been together for so long, sometimes the passion, the eros kind of love, isn't there any longer, but they still feel connected. They built a life together. And you can see people walking side by side and just sharing their life, sharing their story together. That's where you get into this deep level of connectedness that has patience and tolerance that gets built over long periods of relationships where you know each other and you accept each other. Eros, of course, is the passionate kind of love, an intimate kind of love that generally happens especially at the beginning of a relationship. Philia is an affectionate love that we have for friends, that deep, friendly relationship that we have with others. Storge is a neutral kind of love, one that we kind of use for like our brothers and sisters, our aunts and uncles, but it also can be used as to describe a love for our country or our faith. Philautia is a word that is used to connection a wider capacity to love ourselves. That if we feel secure and comfortable in who we are, we have a bigger capacity to love. In English, there's one word, love. In other languages, there are other words that describe different levels and different loves. But in our practice, it's always important to remember that when we talk about being love and acting from that place of love, it means so many different things. So when I'm talking about sharing the love that I have with somebody I'm committed to, it's quite different than when I'm talking about sharing the love that I should have with somebody I don't know or somebody I struggle with or somebody I don't agree with, right? The thing most people find difficult are phrases like loving your neighbor as yourself, right? But in a Zen approach, we take that place that love doesn't mean we're focused on being a lover. We are focused on being love, embodying and practicing it to make it part of everything we do. So, loving yourself and love your neighbor as yourself can be difficult, right? And I'm not going to get into the interpretations of the Bible. There are plenty of places that you can study that. But the mindful way to look at it is to act from that place of love as often as we can. It doesn't mean we have to like the other person, but every interaction we put forth should come from that place of love, embodying the practice and making it part of everything we do. That's what we're practicing. So the truth is, the ego is built around relationships. We tend to get caught up in either what's in it for me or what can I do to make this other person happy so that they don't leave me. The ego is built around relationships, but to come from the soul, to truly be soul based and authentic, the soul only wants to be love. It doesn't want to strive, it doesn't want to cling, it wants to be. It wants to liberate. The energy of love is liberating. So even when we think about somebody we disagree with wholeheartedly, acting from that place of love will bring us peace if we practice. So to focus on finding a loving acceptance for everyone is definitely a challenge, but it is the core of living a more peaceful life, of living a more mindful life. It is the core that can take us from living in the lower conscious space to a higher conscious space where we rise above. It takes practice. And the practice is to see love and be love every moment of every day. And on the surface that might sound like a lot of work, but with practice it gets easier and easier. What you practice grows stronger. So, when we start focusing on it, it's a true joy when we can turn to someone who we didn't like, when we can turn that person into somebody we can look at from a place of love, when we can think about somebody like a politician who perhaps we despised because we felt they were coming from a place of evil or greed. We can take a step back and see them from a place of love because we can see them as a person who is struggling to go through their own life, perhaps. One way I practice is somebody taught me to do this a while back where I had this true deep anxiety with a politician, and I won't mention the name, but I took a picture of that person. I didn't take a photo. I mean, I took a cut out a picture of that person and I put it on my dresser. And every morning when I wake up and I say good morning to a new day and I focus on how grateful I am to the day, I think about all the people I love and I wish them love and safety and health in the new day. And all the other beings that are out there, I wish them that same thing. But it's difficult when I look at this politician to do the same thing, but I try to do it. It reminds me of how far I have to go when I struggle to do it. But if I can do it and I can look at that photo of that person and say, may you be happy, or may you be free from suffering, or may your heart be filled with loving kindness. Do I expect that's going to change them? No, because it's not about them, it's about me. It's about how I'm moving forward, coming to everyone from that loving place. Mother Teresa described it as seeing Christ in all of his distressing disguises. The truth is, she had an intimate love affair with each and every one of the poor people and the lepers that she was picking up from the gutters in India. And I thought to myself, that's the way to be love. And that is what I've been training myself for the past quarter century to do, to be with the beloved in everyone and to see that love is in every form, everywhere. But it takes practice and practice and practice. So we go to that place where we embody love in everything we do. We go to that place in the center of our chest, in that heart space, and we breathe into it and know that love is there. It's not something that I need to go out and look for, it's there. And that means that I do the right thing. I help others as much as possible and not focus my life on accumulating things and people and stuff. I focus on the quality. But that's just the beginning. Because the truth is, love has no limit. And that's something we've got to accept. But the more we embrace it and the more we stop trying to ration it out only to the people who deserve it, the more we receive of it. Look, we all go through our life and we get hurt from time to time. And sometimes we can go through a difficult relationship that ends. Sometimes we lose somebody, somebody passes on who we truly miss, who breaks our heart. And so what do? We pull back into our space and we build this wall around our heart and say, no, I don't ever want to be hurt like that again. So we shut ourselves down. But that's disconnecting from our true spirit and our true nature. It hardens us to life. And that's no way to go. And that's not being authentic. So we should open ourselves up and say, we can move forward. The other thing we have to do is take a step back and don't buy into the peddlers of fear. Those people who are trying to push this fear and divisiveness. We come back into ourselves and say, no, we're not going to do that. That's what we focus on moving forward. It's all about reframing. Just as we lean into our emotions and reframe them in meditation, so too should we lean into and reframe how we see those that we have trouble with. Reframe it. See them from a different perspective. We see them as a teacher and understand that whatever they're experiencing in this time, in this conflict, is going to teach us something. So we open our mind and we learn. And when we learn something, we grow from it. And from that, we should be grateful for the opportunity to learn. Taking it from the perspective, we learn that it doesn't matter if the other one sees or knows about our practice. It's about our conscious focus. So it's interesting to see. It's an interesting thing to see when we start practicing this way. However differently we start to see everyone differently. We take a look and we say, this is another soul just like me who's taken on this complicated life just as I have. That's the start. So no matter what they do, we will learn from them and we'll walk away wiser than before. It's getting into that space, and it's something I practice so often. I see you. I see you. And I wish you well. I see you. And I wish you peace. And that person may be angry with me, or they may judge me, or they may think I'm not this thing or that thing, but I see them. And I still wish them well because I see them as my teacher. And the truth is, if we get into that space where we wish someone well, we can't connect to hate. We can't connect to anger because we can't wish somebody well at the same time being angry at them. It changes everything. We refocus. This is another soul just like me, who's taken on this complicated life just as I have. Now, their set of circumstances led us to a different place, but they are no less searching for love and kindness and understanding in their life. It's just different. So we want to rest in our souls and not in our ego. And we'd like to give everyone the same opportunity to change because we're changing. So it's liberating to resist another person politically or in another way in our life, but see him or her as another soul. We take this approach that says, I'm not going to fight with others because everyone is a cousin of mine in some way or another. We may disagree with one another in our current incarnation, but we are all souls. I can still voice my opinion and I can take actions against theirs, but I do it from a place of love, not from a place of hate. And that changes everything. That changes everything. So we want to get out of our ego and we want to lift up our spirit. There's a huge difference when we move through our life that way because it changes everything. It changes the way our body responds because when we act from a place of love, our mind releases all these different hormones, all these different feelings. It changes the chemistry of our body. And that's why it's so important.
In all biological organisms, there's something referred to as the biological imperative. The biological imperative can't be found by biologists. There's no place they say, oh, here it is in the cell. But what it represents is the drive to survive. When we start to feel that our life is threatened, it's not a conscious at first. It's a gut feeling. It's visceral. Something in my gut says something's not right. This is the biological imperative looking at your potential future in the world that you're living in. And what we really have to recognize is that people are feeling it in their gut. The world is not right. It's not right. And I go, well, this is wonderful because this is a feedback system that's saying the world in which you live is not in harmony with you. And therefore, what it really means is that we have to change how we influence the world in our own way. And it says that if we start to change and send out love instead of just receiving fear, that the love we send out has two aspects. Yes, there's an external consequence of love. It influences everyone and everything around me. There's a profoundly different chemistry if I have a thought of love coming into my body, which you can feel. When you're in love, you can feel it. Yes, your cells are bathing in chemistry of love. But when you have fear, it's a different chemical response. It gets you girded up for response, protection, walling you off from the outside. I don't want that thing to come in and take care of, my inside. And I say, well, what's the relevance? And the answer is very simple. The chemistry released by the brain in fear shuts down the growth mechanism of the body, shuts down the maintenance of the body to conserve energy. And the biggest thing is there's only one consequence, and that is disease and illness. And it turns out 1% of disease on this planet is connected to genetics. 90% of disease or more is lifestyle and the psychology of love and fear. 90%. And it says, be in love, and your body will be maintained, and your immune system will be at peak performance. Be in fear, and the game is over.
So when we come into that place where we're going to practice being love, it means we approach life from a place of sharing the intention of loving kindness with all beings, with all of life, with all of nature and all of earth and all of the universe. And there's no beginning and no end to it when we change this perspective of it. It means we're paying attention, but not expecting. It means we're going into that place where we discover that we embody the spirit of love, and it starts to show up in our life when we start to let it come up instead of resisting it and pushing it down. Paying attention, but not expecting. Being open to see, but not seeking. Allowing it to come in, but not forcing it. And the truth is, we can't expect every moment of every day to be perfect, but we can approach the challenges from a space of love and acceptance and trust in our abilities to find a loving way through all these challenges. You know what's easy? It's easy to go into that space of fear and hatred and anger because that's the ego mind and it just takes over so easily. But you know what? We don't want to go through our life easily. We want to take control, and we always have a choice to come back into that heart space and say, no, I'm not going to respond that way. No, because it's not worth the pain. It's not worth the anxiety. It's not worth the stress. Because when you come from that place of love, the body is filled with that healing energy. When you come from that place of anger or, or hatred, your body is filled with tension and stress. And the stress response in the body shuts us down from the healing energy that flows through us. It shuts us down from the creative power we have within ourselves. That's the truth. So we want to change that. Being love means we really look and we pay attention to our words and our actions and the sounds around us, and we pay attention to everything we see with an open mind and an open heart. Being love means we approach life from a place of sharing intentions of loving kindness with all beings and all of life and all of nature and the universe. Understanding there's no beginning and no end to love. It's always there. Sometimes when we think about it, we think there was a beginning and an end to it. But in love there is no beginning and no end. We just tend to ignore it at times. But just like the breath flows and just like the heart beats, love is always there within us. Sometimes we think about that it started when we fell in love that first time. But the reality is our love That's not where it began. It was already there. Our love was there already. It's the one thing that's always with us. Thich Nhat Hanh says, our first love has no beginning or end. Our first love is not our first love and it is not our last love. It's just love because it's with everything. In the teachings, we believe that love was there before we were ever created. It's been passed on from one to the next. It's all around us. It's the energy. From this perspective, we focus on what the universe is made up, and they say the universe is made up of matter, but we say what matters most in the universe is love. It's a shift in our perspective. So we need to rethink this view on love. It's been there all along. If you try to think about it and you try to pinpoint where love first began or where it first showed up in your life, is it your parents? Is it a teacher? Is it a grandparent? Is it a sibling or a friend or the first time you held somebody's hand? No, it's been there all along. Love isn't something that we fall in and out of. It's just there. So we tend to think that love is like a package that's delivered by someone. But if we think that way, then we get stuck in this place where we think that at some point that person can take it away, or they may lose interest in it. So we start to focus on the fact that we may lose it, and we become possessive and guarded and afraid of not having it. And we think our happiness depends on this person or this thing. But when we take a step back and say it's already there, it takes the pressure off, because it's not fair to say that my love, my happiness depends on this thing happening or that person. It's not fair to them. It's too much pressure. Because love really isn't dependent on anything or anyone else. It's there. It's already there. We didn't fall in love that one time, but we fell into a love that awakened a deeper level of love, and maybe it helped it rise to the surface and be more apparent, but it was already there. We just have to cultivate it in so many different ways instead of just waiting for the right moments or the right person or the right thing to happen. Because love isn't dependent on anyone or anything else. Now, as I say, some people may come into our life that enhance that love, but it was there no matter. So with this in mind, we must always remember that every person, even those people we disagree with, even those people who we think carry so much hatred in their heart, they have the seeds of love within them. They exist. Inside each and every person, there are the seeds of compassion and understanding and love. And it's up to us to nurture them. Every day, we need to be love. We need to remember that every action we take and every word we speak and every meditation we do either nourishes those seeds or neglects them. Our authentic, loving nature sometimes may be buried deep within our consciousness, beneath layers of busyness and forgetfulness and ego and suffering. Sometimes that love is buried beneath the scars of our life and the pain that's been put on us by others. But with practice, as we start focusing, we learn to water that authentic love so that it starts to grow and thrive within us. Again, we tend to think that love is like a package that's delivered by someone. But if we think about it that way, we know that at some point they may pull it away. And we don't want to focus on it that way. When we discover that it's already there, we will learn to see love as it is, as it already is. And then we can't help but focus on nurturing it. We start to see that love is all around us. We see it in the face of a child, in the way our pet greets us and come home from work. We see it in the kindness of somebody we don't know. We see it in that flower that blooms and the sun that rises and a walk on the beach, in our favorite food or our favorite song. Those are the things we love, and love is already there. Then we start to see it within ourselves, because that love is already there. That's when we discover that we are alive in love and we come from love and we are love. and we have the capacity to walk in love in everything we do. Then we find a new way to be alive and to be whole, despite our wounds and our fears and our suffering and our loneliness. We start to learn that love wasn't missing from our lives at all. And we discover that it's been there all along. We were just taught to see it a different way. And that's when we finally find ourselves operating at a higher level of consciousness, basking in the glory and peace of love. And when we find that place, it's the most healing thing imaginable. In all the wisdom traditions, in all of the religious teachings, in every text that we read, through it all, if you read beneath the dogma, if you read beneath all the rules and the expectations of how you need to live up to these things, we see that the teachings all come from the foundation of love. Now, as these texts are moved passed down from generation to generation, people put rules on them, but the energy of love is there. No matter your belief system, it's there. When we start to embody love in everything we do, it settles into place. And we start to find peace and harmony. And when we connect to the harmony of love and peace, then we start to see that's how we heal. Because when we see disease and suffering and pain, it's because something's not in harmony. So we have to focus on the difference between being love and giving love. Being love means we embody it in everything we do. Giving love means we just give it out and expect something in return. We focus on being love because it's a love that replenishes us. When we start focusing on that, we put our energy into the things that we focus on growing. Being love means we carry love for ourselves and others unconditionally. It's a love that overflows, and it can be given to anyone and anything around us without expecting anything in return. Everyone around us becomes an automatic recipient of that love, whether they know it or not. And the more we walk in love, the more that love flows out of us. And the more love flows out of us, the more that comes back to us. It's almost as if suddenly we become this vessel, this spring of love, which we are. When we're being love, we don't need people to behave a certain way in order for us to be loving towards them, because we already are love, and it automatically flows to them. There's this deep level of maturity when we stop needing love and start being love. It's almost as if we finally awaken to the truth of our life, and it just starts to overflow, and we share it without even trying. We find ways to give it, and give it, and give it some more. But it's not even that difficult, because the more we practice giving it, the more it starts to flow. And love goes from being a relationship thing into a state of being. It isn't dependent on anything or anyone else. In fact, it doesn't even matter if anyone's there or aware of it. It just happens. Think about this. What happens when a flower blooms deep in a forest? Deep in a forest where no one has ever been. It's not on the side of a path. It's way in the depths of a forest. And nobody knows its fragrance. Nobody walks by to admire it. Nobody sees the beauty of it. Nobody's there for the flower to share. So what happens? Does it die? Does it suffer? No. It just goes on and it blooms. It simply blooms. It makes no difference whether anyone notices. It's not relevant. It sends its fragrance out into the wind. It goes on offering its gifts to the world no matter what. In the same way, if we're alone, we can go on sharing love. If we're being loved, then our love isn't only there when someone else is in our life. It's always there. If we're being loved, nobody needs to come to us and ask for it. We give it. It's there. It's like the sunrise every day. The sun that rises up over the horizon and shares its light with the world. It does it without condition. It doesn't care about how rich or poor you are. It doesn't care about your nationality or your race or your religion. It doesn't care. And we shouldn't either. The truth is, if we needed someone else to truly be love, then it would be gone when they're not there. But we all know that love remains. No one's pulling our love out. Sometimes they elevate it. But if we set it free, when we choose, then it starts to thrive. So you must choose to let it free always. And this whole concept of being loved takes practice. And we need to take certain steps that we can do it. We need to sow the seeds. And when we sow the seeds of what we can do from this place of love, we're also sowing the seeds of compassion and forgiveness and joy and gratitude, because they are seeds of love too. So some of the things we can do to focus on being love is to think before we act, try to envision the consequences. Sometimes we should try to see the good in everyone and everything, and that's not easy to do. Because the truth is, there's a lot of bad in the world, and there are some people who do things that hurt others, and they seem to thrive on it. Some people seem to thrive on causing pain. So if we think of the good versus evil and surround ourselves with the power of good, then we're taking the right steps. If we stop looking for what's evil and we start looking for what's good, we will see the good more than the evil. It's always about what you put your sights on. And if you focus on that one evil person who did that one bad thing, you will consume all that energy and you will have anger and hatred. But if you look around that person, that one person that did the bad thing, there are many, many others there to help heal others. There are people that come together to help overcome. So we want to think positively. We want to surround ourselves with people who think the same way. We want to open ourselves up and have a heart of compassion and kindness and focus. With practice, it becomes easier. So instead of focusing on how to be loved, perhaps we just focus on goodness. Look for the good and be good. And goodness and love are undeniably connected, because you can't have love without goodness. Focusing on the good is an important step in the practice of being loved. And the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. The other thing we have to remember is we should always look at life and say, there's another chance. We shouldn't get stuck in the feeling that we only have one shot to get it right. Practice doesn't require perfection, it just requires practice. So if we practice goodness and we practice loving kindness and we practice being love, then it moves us forward. It's also important to let go of the notion that love is an emotion. I believe, and the way we're teaching it right now, is love is a state of being. Yes, there's an emotional aspect to it, but it's more than just an emotion. It's more than just a thought or an action. Because here's the thing, when we have an emotion, when we feel an emotion, it doesn't last. Sometimes it lingers, sometimes it lasts longer than it should, but emotions come and go. When we have a thought pops into our head, and as soon as something distracts us or pulls away from that thought goes away. But love never goes away. It's always there. Being love's a combination of our emotions and our thoughts and our actions and our attitudes, but it's also part of our spirit. So we need to accept that love is an energy that flows through each and every one of us. Some of us just elevate it. Some of us embrace that truth instead of resist it. Some of us move away from the old teachings that to be loving and compassionate and kind and sympathetic is a weakness. It's not a weakness, it's the most powerful thing you can do, because people will be attracted to you. Maybe not physically attracted, but attracted to be, they want to be around that energy because it's nurturing and it's healing. Love really is the source from which we were created. Love is the source from which everything was created. So instead of seeking love from external sources, we should practice generating it from within, and then we find love in all things, everything. We have to remove the conditions our ego puts in love, letting go of the need to find it through our own relationships. And when we put conditions on it, it creates a space for us to say that if this person doesn't love me in a way that meets my expectations, then something's wrong with me. So it's important to remember that nothing is ever wrong with us. We simply are who we are. So if there are conditions on our love, then it's not authentic. True love is unconditional. And when we embrace the fact that we are love, we start to see love in everything we do. Then we find peace. Then we find freedom and fulfillment in all the things we seek. We realize that life doesn't have to be difficult and filled with suffering. We realize that no person is unworthy of love. We just need to practice opening ourselves up to that truth. Opening ourselves up to this truth. I want you to close your eyes again and breathe into your heart space. And I want you to just think about this. Think about this one phrase. We are love. So let's be love. And I want you to breathe in and think to yourself 3 times. I am love. I am love. I am love. And if you allow yourself to get out of that head space, that ego space, it resonates with you. It's the harmonious energy. And it's the most healing power in the universe. So contrary to the lyrics of so many songs, real love has no beginning and no end. It arises from within, and it is there to be awakened. It's indiscriminate, like the sun that rises and shines, and it doesn't choose who it's going to shine on. It gives itself to the moment without asking anything in return. Authentic love has no opposite, because the notion of hate doesn't exist when you're embraced by love. It's impossible. When you're moving through your life, acting and being in that space of love, there is no hatred. There's nothing but love. And then love starts to touch our lives. Love starts to show up when we let it in. But when we know that it's already there, we don't have to search for it. Love is really something that goes beyond definition. Words don't give it as much power as it really has. But when we embrace a sense of calm, when we embrace that sense of stillness and harmony, when we feel that joy and warmth that comes from our heart, and we act from a place of truth and authenticity, then we are expressing our love. If we truly live the love that we are, we'll find that there's more there. There's more than we can ever imagine. If we are love, we see so many ways for us to express ourselves in love. When we embrace the energy of love, we see all these opportunities to share it. And we don't need validation because we are the expression of love. And once we accept that truth, we express it every chance we get. We offer an open heart, a deep felt compassion, and a gratitude that goes beyond just saying thank you. We move through a place of accepting that we'd rather move from this place of love and focus on what's missing. When we express love, we find love is given back over and over again, and it's not something we're searching for. One of the tools we can bring into our tool chest to practice this is the practice of loving kindness. In meditation, we call it metta. So we're going to talk about that just a little bit, what it's all about. And here's a video by Sharon Salzberg, who wrote the book on it.
When I first decided to read your book, Love and Kindness, I was so embarrassed about reading a book called Loving Kindness that I hid it under magazines on airplanes and other books. And I don't think I'm alone in terms of having a little bit of squeamishness around whatever loving kindness is. You're laughing, so...
I'm laughing because it's like pornography or something. It's like you're hiding the book cover.
It's not nearly as exciting as pornography, just for the record.
It depends.
People have some sort of squeamishness around it. Why do you think that is?
I think the word is odd to begin with. I think in general we have an association with love, with kindness, as sort of secondary virtues. And I often think, the culture tells us if you can't be brilliant, you can't be courageous, and you can't be wonderful. It's like, okay, be kind, it's nice, it's not great, but it's good.
So you think people think that there's a weakness inherent in being kind or compassionate?
A weakness and a foolishness. Like you're going to be kind of stupid and gullible, and you're going to be sort of a doormat. You're going to let people hurt you, and you're just going to sort of smile. Or you're going to let other people be hurt or abused or oppressed, and you're going to kind of smile. And I think people really, deep down, think it makes you kind of stupid. But I think it is of greatness. I think that if we recollect somebody who's been really kind to us in a genuine way in our lives, we don't think of them with contempt, like I pulled one over on you. It's with quite a lot of gratitude. And I don't think we begin to understand the strength and the power and the force of those qualities.
My concern was that it's just so touchy-feely, ooey-gooey, squishy, that it just made me uncomfortable. It just felt like something that we get lectured about in kindergarten. And that I ignored anyway. But I was kind of a jerk as a kid. But the thing is, the thing that really turned me around, there are a number of things that really turned me around, but one of them is the science.
What the science shows us is that qualities like loving kindness or compassion actually make us happier, and that means we're more resilient, and we have more inner resource, and we can hang in there in very difficult situations in a much more sustained way. And so some of the most interesting science, I think, has to do with people in very stressful situations, first responders, caregivers, things like that, and to understand that these are very adverse circumstances where you're seeing a lot of suffering, and you need a sense of inner resource to be able to continue on and do your work.
So, that goes right to the point. Rather than being a weakness, what the science is showing us is that compassion, loving kindness is actually a strength.
Yeah.
In fact, for people who aren't first responders or doctors or in jobs where you run the risk of empathy burnout, there are studies that show that compassion makes you healthier, happier, more popular, and more successful. So this is, if you're interested in being a high achiever in any way, this stuff, as ooey-gooey as it may seem on the surface, is actually super important. Let's talk about the actual practice. Okay, so this is a different kind of practice than mindfulness meditation, although they are related and complementary. So just walk us through the basics of what this practice entails.
Sit comfortably, eyes open or closed, however you feel most at ease. Choose certain phrases like, may I be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease, and begin repeating them silently over and over again. And then maybe the third step is to understand that there will be several different applications, and that we offer this to ourselves, we offer it to other people or beings that we know, and then ultimately we will end up with all of life.
You've heard me say this before, but the actual practice struck me initially as Valentine's Day with a machete to my throat. It felt like you're envisioning these people, you're visualizing various people in your life, and then sending them goodwill or good vibes. The thing that made me willing to do it is that you pointed out you don't actually have to force a feeling. You just have to try. So can you just walk me through the basics of the practice?
Yeah, that's kind of my particular thing. I really emphasize that a lot. There are ways in which, say, thinking about ourselves at the end of the day, we can pretty well only focus on the mistakes we've made and the things we said wrong, and that really stupid thing we said at lunch, at the meeting, so much so that our whole sense of who we are and all that will ever be like collapses around that really stupid comment. So the process of loving kindness is like paying attention to a bigger picture. It's not denying. I mean, maybe that really was a stupid thing we said at lunch at the meeting, and there are consequences to that. But that's not all that we are. And so can we reflect on a bigger sense of who we are, not only paying attention to the negative while not denying it. And so loving kindness practice is attention training. And we guide our attention, or we expand our attention usually through the silent repetition of certain phrases. It's the way we pay attention differently. And maybe there's a feeling, maybe there's no feeling. Honestly, I don't think it matters.
Because, and this is the heart of the matter for me as a skeptic who can't believe he now does this practice every day, it's not like we're stuck with our factory settings. Compassion is a skill that you can train just the way you can train, your bicep in the gym.
Yeah.
And that is huge.
Yeah. I sometimes call loving kindness practice a stretch, in that we are experimenting with looking at ourselves from different angles, looking at others in different ways, so that this person, say, we normally ignore, we look at. That's the experiment. It's a stretch. Or when we think of ourselves, we don't fall quite into the pit of only thinking about the mistake we've made, but we stretch. We kind of experiment with wishing ourselves well.
So when we open our heart this way and we start practicing practices like loving kindness, or sitting in a space that we reflect on the people around us. I remember back when I was a kid, my aunt and uncle we lived in New Orleans, so they took me to a Saints game a couple times, and I guess that's how I became a huge Saints fan. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But they used to go to the game early, and they would sit on the on the ramps that walk into the stadium and just watch people. And they never really said anything. But later in life, I realized that they weren't judging them. They were just reflecting on how all these different people come together from different walks of life to share an experience. And I think that practice can really be powerful. So Sharon Salzberg talks about it from a perspective of seeing people and wishing them well, wishing them kindness, wishing them happiness, wish them to be free from suffering. So in our practice of loving kindness, in a metta meditation type, we're not really looking at people out in public, but we're doing it in our meditative practice. So I'm going to show you one of those in just a few moments, but we can focus on how we can bring this practice and think about how we can change the way we see people that we struggle with, the people we might not agree with. We can focus up from this different places. So metta is often referred to as loving kindness, but it can also be translated, and I think it's a better phrase, is wishing goodwill to others. And it really can be an antidote for ill will and hate and enmity and fear, because when we focus on goodness and goodwill, we can't come from those places. And when we practice goodwill, we remove the fear and the negative reactivity of our mind, and we get out of that ego space. We stop focusing on hatred, and we turn that thing into other things. We can move it and wish people goodwill. Goodwill towards ourselves, goodwill towards someone we love, goodwill towards friends, goodwill towards those who we're neutral about, and goodwill to those who we may see as our enemy. And that's what our whole practice is about. So here's a short practice on what I was talking about in the stadium perspective, but she does it at Grand Central.
Rush hour. No need to rush. Slow down. Stop. See. Be simply aware of what is going on. Take in the world. Notice each person as they hurry by. Look at them. Follow their path as they travel through space. This moment, truly see them. Each one is a unique individual. What a wonderful chance to offer them loving kindness. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at ease. May you be joyful. May you be peaceful. May you be contented. May you be at ease. May you be safe. May you be healthy. Just as you seek happiness, all beings everywhere also want happiness. Offer everyone you see and everyone unseen unconditional good wishes. May all beings be at peace. This is Street Loving Kindness. This is Sharon Salzberg.
And then to develop that practice even further, we offer it to ourselves. When we look in the mirror, when we find ourselves struggling, when we practice it this way in a metta meditation and we think about others, we think about the person we love and we send those phrases, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering, may you be filled with loving kindness. We see the power and the energy of it and see how, not easily, but how freely it flows when we think of someone we love. When we invite in that practice and think about somebody who's our friend or a family member who we care for, and we say those phrases, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering, may your life be filled with loving kindness, we see that that energy flows. Even when we think of somebody, some people that we're neutral with, the people that we encounter in our daily life who we don't really know that well, maybe it's a cashier at the store or somebody we encounter at work who we don't know, and you think those phrases, we can see that they flow. We think of that person and we say, may you be free from suffering. May you be happy. May your life be filled with loving kindness. And then we can invite in that practice with someone we have a struggle with, someone who may have hurt us or somebody we disagree with, and we can offer those phrases and see perhaps there's a little more struggle, but it will still go there. When we think of that person that we have a difficulty with, we can lift our hearts and open our hearts and say the same things. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May your life be filled with loving kindness. And we should offer those same things to ourselves. When we think of ourselves, may I be happy. May I be free from suffering. May my life be filled with loving kindness. And there are other phrases we can add in there. The beautiful thing is this practice of loving kindness is out there everywhere. To continue that practice, we can open ourselves up and listen to some other meditations that are led by others. And if you go on YouTube or Insight Timer or some of these other sites, you can find thousands and thousands of loving kindness type meditations that come from different perspectives. But with practice, I can use it for myself in those times when perhaps I'm feeling fear. I can pull myself back and relax into that practice of loving kindness and say to myself, when I'm feeling that fear, may I be at peace. May I be at ease. May I be well. May I be happy. May I be free from fear. And perhaps that fear lessens. It might not totally go away, but it has not quite so much power over me because I've bathed it in the kindness of love. When I feel anger towards something, I can whisper those same words in privacy of my heart and my mind and say, may I have compassion for myself. May the anger be overcome with love. May I free myself from that anger. In those moments when I feel worried, I can calm myself down and bring myself back into the present moment gently by reciting phrases to myself like, may I be free of worry. May I be at peace. When those feelings of grief come back in, when I think of someone I love who's passed, I can soothe myself. May I be at peace. May I be at ease. May all beings be at peace. Those phrases in that practice is like dripping drops of water. And with dripping drops of water, the bucket of love becomes filled. This is the practice And it is a practice. And I encourage you to adopt it as part of your practice. So thank you for joining me on this session. I'm Coach Bill with Meditate School of Mindfulness. And to learn more, if you'd like to listen to some loving kindness meditation, go on our YouTube channel or visit our website at www.meditateyou.me. Now, as we come to the end, may you be happy. May you be free from suffering. And may your life be filled with loving kindness. I wish you well.